It's a real privilege to be here with you this afternoon on this beautiful Sabbath day, and especially after a wonderful potluck. We've been fed physically. Now it is our prayer that God will feed us spiritually. Would you bow your heads with me as we begin with prayer, please? Heavenly Father, we're so grateful, Lord, that you've given us this opportunity to hear, to understand, to read about what you are doing in the world today, to be able to understand our part in the mission that you've given us. I pray, Lord, that you will use the words, the ideas presented to strengthen our faith, to know that you're in control, to show us more about what your mission is for us, and to be increased in zeal and energy, enthusiasm to carry out the mission which you've given us. Thank you, Lord, for answering our prayer. We pray that you will circle this building with your holy angels, keeping out any influences that would distract us or negatively influence what we learned today. Thank you for hearing and answering our prayer. We pray it and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. For a little over 12 years now, we've been living an experiment. Some of you have heard the CDs, seen some of the DVDs, have read the book Mission Pilot or Mission Miracles. You are familiar, yet at the same time, some of you are not. And maybe some that will watch this video or listen to it on the internet might not be familiar. So I'm going to give you a quick summary to give you a background of why we are here today and what God is trying to tell us at this time. My wife and I had the privilege of having parents that grew up in the mission field. And I grew up in the jungles. She grew up in the mountains of Bolivia. We became the best of friends, and at 8 years old, I realized that I had to move quickly because some other boy wanted to be her friend too. So I bought a bottle of perfume, and I gave it to her, and I asked her to marry me. The Bible says even a child is known by his ways. And I move fast today. I don't lose opportunities, and I didn't when I was 8 years old. And so 12 years later, she kept her promise, and we were married there near Collegedale, Tennessee, in Apison on my parents' farm. And we dedicated our life to serving the Lord in South America. We worked for about 15 years in a variety of different responsibilities. God has given me the privilege to attain education in different areas, in aviation and nursing, aviation maintenance, engineering, business administration, and also as an ordained minister. And God has blessed our work, and we felt delighted. It's our 15 years working for the denomination was one of the biggest blessings. We have 2 daughters. We adopted another daughter and 2 sons. And so we have a total of 5 children. We have a variety of nationalities in the home, from Bolivian to Peruvian, Mexican, North American, and we collect passports. And we have all of these. And our one son-in-law that we have 3 daughters married now. One son-in-law is from Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean. Another son that we have is I just married our daughter a couple weeks ago, tomorrow, in Australia. So we now have an Australian son-in-law, and one that's a North American but of Portuguese descent. So we have all of these different varieties of nations in our home. So we enjoy the combination God has given us to enjoy languages, to enjoy cultures. And we've lived and worked in a lot of countries. After 15 years of working for the denomination, our daughters are growing up. We knew it was time to go back to the U.S., to come back to the U.S., to let the kids get familiar with their homeland. And if you don't come back sometime, they always come back and feel like foreigners. So there's an appropriate time where you have to come back home to let them enculturate and develop friendships with people of their own culture. So we made a choice to come back, but at that point, we decided, I went through a personal crisis. I was teaching in a graduate business program for Andrews University and down in the Caribbean, and also teaching computer science for the college down there, Caribbean Union College. And I felt like I had not accomplished enough for God. And I looked back at my 15 years. I loved every minute of it. I'd worked very hard. God blessed the work of my hands, and I left a lot of students, a lot of computer networks, airplanes, aviation programs, medical work established. And so I really felt satisfied. But as I compared really what I had done to what I really knew needed to be done. For example, I wanted to conquer a country. Just the city of Lima, where I worked for 6 years, at that time, had about 7 million people living there. Today, we have about 10 million people living in Lima, Peru, and there's more unreached people today than when I started there 15 years ago. So as I looked at this, I realized we had done nothing in comparison, a drop in the bucket, to what the real need was. I said, Lord, you know I wanted to reach nations, and after 15 years, I can't say that I have really done that. Have I really made a difference in Lima? Have I really made a difference in a country, in Bolivia, in Peru, Trinidad and Tobago, Mexico? I've been through a hijacking. I've been in prison. I've been assaulted by gangs. I've been beaten with clubs by assailants. I've been through a lot of difficult experiences, assaulted by bank robbers with a gun to the head, a gun to the back, everything you can imagine, and a stick to the head. And yet I realized God was always present. I look back at those times and I could see and feel God's presence. I can see that God was always with me. And so therefore, I look back and I said, Lord, if this is what you've done in the past, and if we're ever going to finish the work, I looked at the finances in the world and I could see they were rapidly getting more complicated as we went along. Now, of course, in the last month or so, we've experienced a lot of things in turmoil economically in the world. But if you look back at 12, 13 years ago, we could see the trend, but you couldn't clearly see how it was going to happen. You knew the approximate idea from what happens when nations get into trouble financially. And I knew that it wasn't going to get easier. It was going to get more difficult. So I turned to the Lord and I said, you have to give me an answer. Show me, what do I do? And God's response was pretty direct, kind of like Nicodemus. You have to be born again. You have to go back to kindergarten and learn the principles. And I said, but Lord, how do you go back to kindergarten and learn again? He said, well, you think, Mr. Professor, that you know so much. But in reality, you don't know anything about how God works. God is going to, I'm going to finish the work in a totally different way, unexpected of what humans normally plan. And so I said, Lord, I want to learn those principles because I want to conquer countries. It's been my dream. So if God said, if you really want to, in my morning devotions, he impressed me, if you really want to learn, I'll give you the opportunity. Yes, Lord, I want to learn. So this is where our experiment began 12 years ago. The Lord led us to ask for permanent return, which means resign your job, ask the denomination to send you home. And we did this like most missionaries do. They asked for a return back home. But instead of going home, we went to the jungles of South America for 1 year, supposedly for 1 year, to begin an experiment with God with 5 children, 200 miles deep in a jungle, to be able to understand how God works. Sometimes God has to take you out of your comfort zone. In fact, not sometimes, all the time. If you're going to learn, we humans don't learn in our comfort zone. How many of us actually ever passed the test by staying in bed? You don't pass your state boards or a bar exam or whatever exam you have by staying in bed and sleeping. You have to sit out and sweat a little bit. In fact, anxiety raises your learning capacity. Did you know that? A slight anxiety? If you go too far, then you go into the panic mode, then you don't learn very well. But if they tell you in 3 hours you're having a final exam, your anxiety level immediately goes up, and the next 3 hours are spent under intensive review of what you have to do, and it increases your capacity to learn. The same way, when God wants to teach us something, he takes us out of our comfort zone, puts us into a very uncomfortable situation, and then our brain goes into learn mode. Now, how many of us enjoy being uncomfortable? None of us do. But did you know that being comfortable is fatal? I want to apologize for the seats you're sitting on. They're nice and soft. If you were sitting on a tree trunk, your learning capacity would be better. And if some of you are trying to go to sleep after lunch, I'll clap my hands, okay? And I'll get your attention. Because it's so comfortable sitting in a nice seat after lunch. And it's easy for the eyes to start closing. So I understand that if I were sitting in your place, I need somebody to clap at me. But I apologize because when we're in a comfort zone, the learning will be less than if we were under difficulty. For example, if we knew that any time today, the chances of us meeting here on this day in an illegal country where we're not allowed to meet together for religious meetings, we would probably be arrested and maybe put to heavy labor. I can tell you that you would hang on every word. Because we would realize that we're paying a high cost to be able to get together. So therefore, we would, by necessity, need to get the most out of it. We made our trip into the jungles of South America, asking God, Lord, this is not comfortable. Having no income, we don't know how we're going to live, we don't know what we're going to eat, but with 5 children, but we want to learn the lessons. And you know, God takes us down and puts us into obscurity sometimes in order to teach us principles that we can use all over the world. In rapid summary, the first lesson we learned was that God would provide for our needs. The Indians started bringing us food. Every morning, we would have a basket of food outside. And we learned that when God calls you to do something, God's word is from Philippians 4:19. My God will provide for all of your needs according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. So we learned that first lesson. The second lesson we learned was, give and it shall be given unto you. We had $300 of reserves. That was all we had. Somebody told me, David, whatever you do, keep $300 under the mattress. Because if you get bit by a snake or one of your children gets malaria, you're going to need to call an airplane to fly you out. And you need some money to pay the airplane. So I kept $300 hidden away. But they brought a sick lady to me who was dying of malaria. They said, Pastor, heal her. Well, being a registered nurse, I knew how to do that, but I needed medicine. And so there is medication for malaria. And I didn't have any. So I had to call for an airplane, bring it in, save her life. I paid my $300 that was all the money I had in the world. We had no other reserves of any kind. And so we gave up our last $300, and I was kind of upset at God. Why would you ask me to give up every penny? This is not fair. I'm a father and I'm a husband. Don't I have a right to provide for my family? David, 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 don't you understand? You didn't come here to take care of yourself. You came here to let me take care of you. And you came here to serve me to take care of the sheep, of my children. So I said, yes, Lord, but I'm very uncomfortable. Well, start learning to trust me. Several weeks went by, and suddenly this lady from New York just happened to show up in an airplane. She had no idea we were there. She said, my dad used to be a missionary doctor here 30 years ago. She spent 2 weeks with us, and when she left, she handed me an envelope with $1,700 in it. And I realized that God means exactly what he says. The second lesson, given it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over will men. It doesn't say God. It says men will give unto your bosoms. That's interesting. God uses other people to help establish the principles of divine sustenance. God always uses people. Now, he can do it himself, and sometimes he chooses to do so. But he always prefers to use people because that way both sides get a blessing. It's not only the one that receives, the giver gives a blessing. Do you believe that? Absolutely. The great joy. If I had a big thermometer, a joy thermometer here on the stage, you could measure your joy by the level of sacrifice you use in giving to God's work. The more you give sacrificially, the greater your joy. You don't know how much joy it gives you when you sacrifice for somebody else and you see them blessed by it. So many times our churches are not joyful churches because we only give of our excess instead of sacrificially. It's when you give sacrificially that you have the most joy. So when I gave everything I had and I saw God return it, I realized, Lord, there's no limit to what you're willing to do. So we took the $1,700 and we bought medicines and medical supplies and dental supplies, and we equipped our little clinic, and we started taking care of the patients. That was our second lesson. Give, and it shall be given unto you. First, you must give. You don't say, Lord, if you give me, I will give. No. First, you give what you have, and then you get more. But that's not comfortable, is it? It's more comfortable to have extra so I can give than to give everything you have so that somebody can give you back. But that's the way God works. God waits for us to give before we receive back. Now, there was another lesson. And of course, lessons are like Olympic people, Olympians. They jump this high, then the trainer raises the bar and raises the bar and raises the bar. God does the same for us. It was time to learn our third lesson. 2 village captains walked into our village. They said they wanted me to go to their village. I thought, well, that's a good idea. I'll just walk with them to their village, and I'll be there a day or so, and I'll come back. And I said, where do you live? And not far, only 4 days walking in this direction. When I realized it was 4 days walking there and 4 days back, I realized this is not going to be a one-day excursion, is it? And I realized I was going to spend 8 days walking in order to spend 1 or 2 days with them. That's not a good investment of time. If I wanted to reach the whole entire region, I would be spending 90% of the time walking. What a waste of time. Good for my health, bad for spreading the message. So I decided to go ahead and pray for an airplane. And this is where I learned my third lesson. After praying and praying and praying for an airplane, I didn't get any money for an airplane. Now, I knew God had all the money. Haggai 2:8 says, all the silver is and all the gold is mine, saith the Lord. So I know that God owns it. In fact, in Psalms 50, he says, if I were hungry, I wouldn't even tell you, because the whole world is mine and the fullness thereof, the whole earth. So therefore, if God owns everything, then that means that he could provide at any time. By the way, talking about owning everything, I love to pull in physics and mathematics into my illustrations. How many of you remember taking an algebra class or physics class or something? Can you think back that far? Okay. Good. Now, do you remember this guy called Albert Einstein? What is he famous for? Theory of relativity. What was the formula that he developed having to do with the universe? Everybody knows that. What does E equal? E is equal to energy. What represents energy? What does M represent? Mass. What is C squared? The speed of light squared. Is the speed of light constant? The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. It's a constant, right? Right? Okay, so C squared would be a constant as well? It's a fixed number. Good. So let's replace C squared with a K. K stands for constant in an algebra formula, right? So let's put E equals MK. Correct? Is that okay? And did you know that a constant can be eliminated safely from a formula because it's only a constant, it's not a variable? For example, we could say a little e is equal to a little m times a constant. But we could say a big E is equal to m without a constant. It just takes a little bit more. C squared, by the way, the constant is a big number, right? So it's a little e, E is equivalent to a little m times a big number. So all we have to do is make this other e a little bit bigger, and now we can get rid of the k. So now what we have is a big E equals m. Are you following me so far? In other words, a lot of energy equals a little bit of mass. Correct? That's why we get nuclear explosions from, right? A little bit of mass broken apart at the nuclear level creates a lot of energy. Okay, so the raw formula that Albert Einstein developed is E is equal to m. Think of the implications here. Who is the source of all energy? If God ceases to exist, what happens to mass? No mass. If you don't have a source of energy, you have no mass. God spoke and it existed. He commanded and it stood fast. If God disappears, the entire universe disappears. Now can you see why the penalty of sin is death? You unplug yourself from the source of energy, you just cease to exist. This is the basic formula that Einstein developed. Energy is equivalent to mass. And therefore, everything we know, ourselves, the wood, the world, the glass, the trees, the air, exist because an infinite source of energy created it. If that source of energy disappears, mass as we know it disappears. Interesting. God has to exist for the universe to exist. Now, God owns all the gold and silver because without him, there would be no gold or silver, correct? Okay, he owns everything. Now, if God owns everything, he could have paid for an airplane. I knew that. So I was praying for one. But eventually, one morning, I was frustrated with God because he wasn't answering my prayer. I didn't know how he was going to get me enough money to the jungles to buy an airplane, but if he sent $1,700, I figured he could send enough money for an airplane. But he didn't. And then I was reading in Exodus 14 how Moses stood before the Red Sea. He said, "Fear not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." But then when he got to verse 15, the Lord said unto Moses, "Why do you cry unto me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward." And when I read that, it was like a knife to my heart. David, stop begging me for money. Go forward and buy an airplane. Well, how do you buy an airplane without any money? But I heard God speaking to me through this verse. And when he said that, I immediately knew what I had to do. I went to the States. I looked for an airplane. I figured I would find one that I needed. I looked through a big magazine, like a newspaper called Trade a Plane. I found a very nice airplane. Oh no, that's kind of expensive. I don't think God can do that. Let me look for a smaller one. And I found a smaller one in very good condition. Very nice. Ooh, the price. No, that's too much for God. Let me think what else I can do here. I finally found one. Yes, this must be the airplane. It does have 2 wings. The engine doesn't work, the paint job doesn't work, the tires are flat, the brakes don't work, the instruments aren't. I have to ask God for this one. God cannot accuse me of trying to ask him for too much. At least it has 2 wings. And I said, Lord, this is the airplane I want. Thank you very much. And God in heaven, David, according to your faith be it unto you. Okay. The day that I went to look at the airplane, a lady handed me a check for enough money to buy the airplane. And I learned my lesson. Don't ever ask for an airplane that doesn't work. It took me a year to get that thing rebuilt. Did you know that it takes more money to rebuild an airplane than to buy one that's flying to begin with? Time and money wasted because I didn't have enough faith. But God works with us according to our faith. So he took me at that level and trained me to think bigger next time. And I got my airplane. And then we needed a school. And I said, let's go forward. We need a school. There's no Adventist schools in the entire country in Guyana, so let's do one. So we built the first one. And then we built the second one. Then we needed another airplane. Then we built the third school. Then another airplane. Then a fourth school. Today we're building our 6th school in Guyana. 18 airplanes and 1 helicopter. God is out to reach the world if only we will follow. God is able, but most of us know by theory. Now it's true that most of my sermon, I'm just a missionary, by the way. I'm not a professor of theology, you understand. I'm a missionary who's here to share my experiences. It's a practical type of Christianity, which is, of course, is the other half to the theory, right? You have to have knowledge, but head knowledge without experiential knowledge is not worth very much. I'm here to share the experiential knowledge based on God's Word because I just took it as a fact and I acted upon it. I'm going to share and take you. This is a very exciting, by the way, presentation. I've only preached this sermon I'm going to give you. We're going to finish up only once. Last week in Guam, or earlier this week, on Wednesday night. I preached in Guam on the other side of the world. And I preached it there for the first time. Some principles you have heard. I'm just giving you a little basis to understand why I acted this way. But I'm excited about what God is doing, but I'm here to present you the experiential strength of acting on what God says. It's very important to act on what God says. Don't just believe what he says, act on it. And so therefore, I acted on it. I got my airplane, went forward. By the way, we have more airplanes than pilots. Not all the airplanes are flying. Some are being repaired, preparing for sending overseas. But because we don't have enough pilots who understand the philosophy of working by faith, we've had to start our own flight school here. One in Australia, one in Norway, one in Romania, and one in the Philippines. Why? Because there's so much work to do, and our schools are graduating pilots who come and say, how much do you pay? And I say, nothing. They go, okay, I'll go apply at Delta Airlines. Today, if you want to conquer the world, there's a different philosophy. If you want to conquer the world today, you got to do it as a volunteer. If you want to be paid a job, those jobs are disappearing rapidly. If you want a nice, comfortable, paid job to be a missionary, good luck. Even if you get away with it, you'll do it very shortly and you'll be out of a job because the finances in the world are rapidly deteriorating. The situation is critical, and very soon I can see that the Seventh-day Adventist Church will not have a single paid employed one of these days because everything is about to be wiped out through God's mercy in order to give us a chance to trust him. We have been cursed with resources in North America. God gave it to us so that we could give it away to finish the work. America has been blessed for one sole purpose, finishing the work. America could have been a Catholic America. But God protected us from the French. He protected us from the Spanish so that we could go with England, who was a different mindset. And God made America into a Protestant nation. And what Rome most fears is a wealthy Protestant nation. Because wealthy Protestant nations sends missionaries all over the world. Even if they're Methodists or Baptists or whatever they are, they still send missionaries over there, and they open God's Word, and they teach that God is the sole owner, and we report to God. And even if you're Baptist, and even if you're Methodist, you teach people to study God's Word. And this destroys the ignorance of darkness. And with darkness, power and abuse flourishes. But when you start educating people in God's Word, regardless of what denomination you belong to, if you start educating with God's Word, you teach them to go directly to God and not to Rome. And so therefore, what Rome cannot tolerate, what Satan does not like, is a wealthy Protestant nation. So the first thing Satan did is made us comfortable in our wealth. Don't spend it on overseas missions, spend it on yourself. What a strategy. He not only is able to handcuff God's work overseas, but he's able to destroy us spiritually because we're living comfortably and we can never grow spiritually. And this Satan has accomplished very well in our country, hasn't he? Most of us believe that we have to take care of ourselves. We believe in 401ks. We believe in retirement accounts. We believe in all of that. This has never been God's plan. I'm not saying it's a sin if you have it. I'm saying your own soul is at risk because you have it. Because you're depending on man-made methods to survive in the future, and there is no man-made methods that can pull you through the future. Only God can. Until you lose everything and you learn too late, you have no preparation, no oil in your lamp to survive the future. So therefore, God today in His mercy may eliminate everything we have in order to save us. Except that many will never survive that crisis because, like Mrs. Lot, their heart is where their treasure is. And if you start fooling with their treasure, their soul goes down with their treasure in the Titanic. So we decided to follow God into the faith level and buy something without any money, and we learned a lesson. If you move forward by faith, whatever God asks you, no matter what the price, God will bring success out of it, because God is the one that guarantees it. You don't have to have any money to be totally successful in God's business. We were just volunteer missionaries out in the jungles, and we find ourselves with schools and airplanes. We never ask anybody, only God. You know what? I was talking to a very, very wealthy Adventist came to see me, and said, David, I want to ask you about this faith thing. And he said, after I explained how it all works, he said, I've never seen anything like this. And I said, have I ever asked you for money? He said, no, never. I said, I never will. He said, why? I said, because you don't own anything. You're just a manager. I only deal with the owner. This is good for wealthy people to know. If you think that you own anything, you probably are going to go down with the ship. Because the only way to survive the future is to lay it all in God's hands and say, Lord, have total control. I own nothing. Everything I am, everything I have is yours. Tell me what you want me to do. Then God will lead you through a training experience that will prepare you to trust Him in the days ahead. But as long as you think you own something, you will try to tell God what to do. Are you understanding the risk? That's why it's so hard for wealthy people to be saved. That's why Jesus said, basically like the camel has to go through the eye of the needle, unload everything before you can get in. That's why God in His mercy, He loves millionaires too, doesn't He? That's why in His mercy, He may destroy and take away everything we have before we look up and finally are able to be saved. Unfortunately, the preparation process is before the crisis happens. So right now, Adventists are going through a preparation process that other people don't have yet. But one of these days, it will not be our turn anymore. It'll be their turn. Our probation will have passed. So we're living right at the edge of eternity, and preparation is going on right now. Today, some of you will make your final decisions on whether you will be saved or not. Because the decision you make of following or not following, caring for yourself, or whatever direction you take, will be amplified in the near future by events, and the direction you take today, you may never come back from again. Hopefully, it will be for salvation. If it's against trusting God, if you feel uncomfortable and you say, not yet, I'm not quite ready to trust God, I think I'm going to do my thing and I think I can pull it off, you may never have another chance, because you will just get stronger and stronger in that direction. I'm praying that you will accept today God's ability to control perfectly, micromanage your life. That you will spend time with Him each day in Bible study and prayer, and that you will allow God, go to Him as the owner and creator of all things. Go to Him and say, Lord, you made me. You gave me what I have, my talents, my skills, my life, my family, my spouse, my children. You gave them to me. Please give me the wisdom and help me to hear you every day and follow you. If we do that, our relationship will grow stronger and stronger. Anyway, in the year 2000, I did make my choice. I realized God could do anything. And so I made a choice to say, Lord, anything you ask of me, no matter how expensive, I will go forward. And then I came to regret those words. Because a few months later, I was told that there was a television network for sale in Bolivia, 6 TV stations for only $1 million. Now, that's cheap, considering that in Chicago they just sold it 1 TV station for $15 million. But in Bolivia, 6 of them for $1 million, that's Christmas. But me, $1 million, a little jungle missionary that doesn't even have a salary, no savings whatsoever, where my children went to school barefoot, I'm supposed to come up with $1 million? The Lord said, David, remember, I told you that I could do anything, and you told me that you would trust me with anything. What if I want you to have that network? Oh, Lord, if I could have a television network with the 6 of the cities, oh, Lord, that would be such an honor. Well, go down. See what happens. Maybe you'll get it if you move forward. So I went there to Bolivia. Indeed, the gentleman who owned it was very happy with our vision. He said, tomorrow we do business. We ended up signing a contract for $1 million. Then he asked me something that I was not wanting to hear. I think you ought to make a down payment. How much would you like? Give me $100,000. Can I use your bathroom? I went to the bathroom and I knelt down. Lord, excuse me. He's asking for $100,000. Where am I supposed to get $100,000? Oh, I see, Lord. Okay, thank you. You know, God gave me, sometimes you have several, like a deck of cards in your hand. You can play this card or this one. And sometimes you're only holding one card. I went to the bathroom without holding any cards. But once I was praying, God dealt me one card. Now, people could say, David, do you really talk to God? You know what I asked Ann Beck? Does the Bible say that the sheep know my voice and hear my voice? So my response is, if you're not talking to God, you're in deep trouble. You better be talking to God. How do you talk to God? Through prayer. How does he talk to you? Through Bible study, and sometimes directly to your mind and through the Holy Spirit's inspiration. But always based on biblical teaching, right? Most of the time, as you read, God speaks to you directly through what you're reading. And then when you're in trouble, he brings back to mind the principles and actual text that you wrote and the examples in order to encourage you. So you're scared and you go, Lord, I'm scared. Immediately, John 14:27. My peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, I give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Thank you, Lord. See? That's God's word. It is God's word. It's God speaking to you through something that you memorized in the past and something that you read. So therefore, but sometimes he speaks to your mind directly. And some people I've heard that God actually talks to them. I've never had that experience as far as an audible voice. But that's okay. Whatever way he chooses, he knows how to do it. And so I went to the bathroom. I said, Lord, what do I do? And God said, why don't you try this? Okay, thank you. I got out of the bathroom and I said, can I borrow your phone? Sure. Got the phone, called my bank president, and I said, Randy, I just bought a $1.5 million. It was $1 million, by the way, but the final cost that he asked for, he wouldn't budge on that. It was $1.5 million. I accepted. I said, what's $500,000? You know, I was asking the Lord, what do I do? And the Lord said, what's the matter with you? Do you remember the 5 loaves and 2 fishes? Yeah. So what's the matter with you? What's 1 million, 1.5? What's the difference? You don't have anything. Good logic, right? I said, you're right, Lord. I don't have any. Either way, it's a miracle. Shoot, you know. 1.5, fine. So I said, I'll take it. And I asked for the property, too, that he threw in. And so I signed a document. Now he wanted a down payment. So I told Randy, I bought a $1.5 million network. And Randy said, David, you bought what? I said, 1.5 million, 6 stations. But David, you don't have any money. I know. That's why I need you to loan me $100,000 for the down payment. He said, David, you're asking me to walk on water, aren't you? I said, yes. He said, well, I've been watching you for some time, and every time you move forward, God always does something. So I'll loan it to you. And he wired me the money. You can sign the papers later. And 2 weeks later, I got back to the States and I signed the papers. But the bank sent me $100,000 without a signature. And I got the money. I paid it. And the owner was happy. And I said, boy, the Lord's opening the doors. But, I mean, the fact that he would loan it to me just like that, to me, was a miracle. I didn't have any assets or anything to put it. Just kind of like a signature loan. But the fact that God solved the problem was the water was opening as I walked forward. First of all, he was willing to sell it to me. You know, many people, before they sell something, they say, could you give me a bank statement? Could you show me a letter of guarantee, right? They didn't ask for that. They just said, obviously, he said, you're wealthier than I am. I mean, $500,000 to you is nothing, obviously. I wish I was as wealthy as you were. And I thought, my dad has a lot of money. So he had a lot of confidence. So I gave him the money. 2 months later, he called me and he said, David, I need you to pay. Now the rest of it, the paperwork is finished. All the legal part is done. Would you come to Bolivia? I got all the documents for you and bring me a check for $1.4 million. I still hadn't paid back the $100,000 yet. And I said, Lord, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go down to Bolivia. We'll see what miracle you went. And while I was going down to Bolivia, somebody delivered an envelope. Inside was a letter talking about a tragic auto accident where the wife was killed. And the husband said, I'm not going to use that money from her life insurance. It's her blood money. So I'm going to give it to the Lord. You use it for anything you need, and send the check to us. And we paid the $100,000 back. And when we paid it back, the bank president said, David, I knew God was going to pay it back. Isn't it wonderful how God can use you to impress a bank president? Anyway, I went down to Bolivia. He asked for the money. I didn't know what to do, so I said, can I use your bathroom? I knelt down. And I heard God tell me, give me a solution. And I did not like his solution. No, Lord, please, no. That was the only thing. Lord, give me another solution. Plan B. Only plan A. I walked out trembling. You know what it was? Just go tell him you don't have the money. Would you like to do that? Would that be a good plan for you? I thought to myself, that's the end of the deal. If he produces the documents and I can't produce $1.4 million, any businessman in his right mind would say, you don't have it? I mean, not even half of it? You know what he said when I told him? I said, I'm sorry, I don't have the money. He said, oh, don't worry, David. God will give it to you. Come back next month. This is a miracle. I've discovered God will either give you the money or he will put it into the hearts of the other people to wait. Because God can produce money anytime he wants to, but sometimes he wants to teach us a lesson of trust. So he asks us to wait. And then he works out a plan so that the people on the other side are willing to wait. Well, a month later I came back. David, you had the money? Can I use your bathroom? Same thing, Lord, please, no. Yes, same thing. Oh, okay. This happened 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 months. By this time, I knew God was doing something special. I knew God could have paid it easily, but during these 17 months, God was teaching me something important. First of all, we got on satellite. I had to sign another $1 million contract with the satellite company. We got on satellite. It was the first Spanish television network the Adventist Church had before 3ABN Latino got on, before Hope Channel had Spanish. We were the first one. So we were breaking new ground. And in Latin America, in Spanish-speaking world, we still are, probably have about 90% of the visibility because we have 100 TV stations, a satellite, the only Adventist television network in Spain, and scattered 300 cable networks scattered around Latin America. And so 100 million people can pick it up to signal in their home. And so that's a lot of visibility. It's a major influence on Latin America. And so God was doing something for us, and after 17 months, I was asking, Lord, I know you're doing a miracle. The fact that we're still here is an absolute miracle nobody can misunderstand. And I learned something from God. You know what he was trying to do? Besides teaching me patience, he was trying to teach all of my Adventist friends that had no faith that you can be perfectly successful with no money. People thought that you had to pay for a network before you can be successful. No. For 17 months, we didn't pay anything else. We paid another payment on the interest, but we didn't pay any principal for 17 months. And we were perfectly successful because God put it into the hearts of those men to always say, "Oh, David, don't worry, next month." Isn't that a miracle? This doesn't happen in the business world, does it? No. And also, not just for my Adventist friends, for my wealthy Adventist friends. Because I thought, I have 4 or 5 friends that $1 million is pocket money. And I thought God would use them to help pay for it. And as I shared the great news, I came back, guess what? God has given us the first Spanish television network. And I shared it with my friends. And I was hoping they would say, "David, that's wonderful. How much do you need? We want to help you." Instead, when I shared it with the first one, the answer was, "You're a criminal. You should have never signed that document. Now you're going to see what's going to happen. You're going to go bankrupt and embarrass the church." I said, "But we've purchased airplanes and we've built schools and God has always..." "Oh, but that's only a $100,000 airplane. This is $1.5 million. This is a totally different ball game, David." I said, "No, it isn't. I'm a nobody from the jungles. $100,000 is just as impossible as 1.5. For you, that's pocket money. For me, it's not a fortune." And he said, "I'm sorry. I'm going to make sure nobody gives you anything. You're going to learn your lesson this time." And you know what? That one person communicated with all the other wealthy Adventists and told them, "Don't give him anything. Let him fry on this one. He has to learn a lesson." Now, remember, this is a normal way of thinking of rich people. Wealthy people have been tempted by Satan to believe that they're important to finishing the work. And their money, the church is dependent on them to finish the work. This is a temptation that rich people fall in. You understand? And so in order to teach our own Adventist brethren that God can be successful without them, it was a very important lesson. So in a year and a half later, we're still on the air. The wealthy people are saying, "Are you still on the air?" "Yes." "Did you pay?" "No." "How can that happen?" "It's a miracle." "Absolutely." So see, God loves wealthy people. And so because God loves the wealthy people who were depending on themselves, God wanted to teach them also that God doesn't need them to finish the work. You see, this is very important. Our wealthy people need to understand God doesn't need your money. Even the middle class or even the poor class. God doesn't need our money. He already owns it all. If all the silver and all the gold is mine, God knows how to transfer money. Money is just inanimate. When he says like that and it rains, the storm, he goes, "Peace be still." Boom. Money move over here. Gold just jumps around. Diamonds jump around, right? The inanimate world always obeys God, correct? So money is not even the issue here. The issue is, let God be the owner of everything. Acknowledge him as owner and creator. When you do that, then he can say, "I want you to give." And you go, "Yes, sir, it's my privilege to be your manager." Am I right? The Bible says that. Jesus says that. So therefore, God was trying in his mercy to teach a lot of us a lesson. "David, you be patient. In my own time, I'll pay. Rich person over there, you think you're important? You're not important. I can do it without you. Thank you." And then when they finally learned that, now they can be saved. You see, so God is teaching all of us to be humble and trust. Anyway, 18 months later, I was called to Bolivia in an emergency meeting. They said, "Time has run out. We're giving you 1 month. We love your station. We know it's of God, but we have no choice, David. We have to pay taxes. We have to do this. We have to pay that and the other. And besides, we have another offer, cash." And they gave me 30 days. Or return it. And I agreed. I said, "I'd be happy to return it." "You will?" "Yes. It's not my station. It belongs to God." But you're just going to return it? No problems. No. You've been more than fair with me. God is a God of justice. And you've been more than just with me. So I know God will honor what you've done. And so in 1 month, if God doesn't pay, I'll be happy to return it. And then you know what they said? "Can we pray together?" Good Catholic men said, "Let's kneel down and pray." So we knelt down together, and after we prayed, that big Catholic man gave me a hug, and he said, "David, don't worry. You won't have to return it. Your God will pay for it." Thank God for Catholic men that have faith in God. Sometimes in Israel, you don't have the same kind of faith. Like the Roman for Jesus, the centurion. Anyway, 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks. "Lord, do something, please." And God's response, "Be still and know that I am God." Psalm 46. A week later, "Lord, please, only 1 week to go." 2 Chronicles 20. This is not your battle, but the Lord's. In this battle you will not fight. 6 days later, Lord, there's only one more day. Please do something. And I got a slap on the face from the Holy Spirit. Not a physical slap, but a mental slap. Stop begging me for money and start thanking me for what I'm about to do. How much are you about to do? How much do you want to thank me for, the Holy Spirit? Well, I owe 1.5 million with interest. Well, thank me for 1.5 million. It's that easy. Yeah, you choose. Okay, I'll thank you for 1.5. And the Holy Spirit said, is that all you need? Well, no, Lord. I mean, isn't that enough? But don't you need some more? Well, yes, Lord. We built a big satellite dish. It cost $200,000. We only paid for half of it. We still need $100,000. Why don't you go ahead and thank me for 1.6 million? It's a deal. I agreed. It wasn't my idea. It came to my mind as suggested by God. Don't you need any more? Well, I mean, 1.5, that's not enough. No, it's not enough if you need more. And so I accepted. It was God's idea. I accepted. 1.6 million. I spent the morning thanking the Lord. Went to the airport. My phone rang. It was an old retired doctor, 84 years old. He told me his wife died of old age, but she left the business. The business, they had no children, belonged to him. He looked through her accounts, realized that she had 8 bank accounts with cash investments. He added it all up. The Holy Spirit said, call your friend David and ask him how much he needs. How much do you need, David, to pay the station off? I need 1.5 million, doctor. Praise the Lord. That's exactly how much he has. I'll send you all of it today. And he did. I went home, got my family together. Lord, we praise you for that great miracle. 1.5. You promised me 1.6. Be patient, David. The day's not over yet. 2 hours later, a dentist came, wanted to hear the whole story with his wife, gave me a hug, hugged my wife. We prayed together. We cried together. When he left, he pulled out an envelope out of his pocket and said, we want to share in the miracle too. We cleaned out our savings, business account, and personal checking accounts. There's 3 checks inside. Gave it to me. All 3 checks added up to $100,000. In 2 hours, God gave us 1.6 million. Now, we're ready to get into the meat of our sermon today. You now understand the background, don't you? That sermon, you've heard it before maybe. Maybe you read the book. But I had to establish that because what we're going to do from here on is we're going to be talking about principles that we learned and what God is about to do in His church. Is that okay with you? Now you understand where we're coming from. Does God have any limits? No. God always uses people. He said in Exodus 3, He told Moses at the burning bush, I have seen the pain of my people, and I have come down to set them free. Therefore, Moses, you go and do it. God came down, God heard, God said, I'm going to set them free, but I'm sending you to do it. Whenever God wants to do something, He sends a person. So you think God today is trying to finish the work in the world? Do you think God so loves this country and other countries that He wants desperately to fill the whole world with the light of the gospel? Are you convinced of that? So who do you think He's going to send? Exactly. And why haven't we done it? Why hasn't God finished it before? People are not willing. You see, God somehow submits Himself to us puny human beings. And God says, I want to finish the work. But if my people don't want to yet, I'll wait a little longer. Isn't that painful? Do you know last night how many people were killed last night? Through satanic rituals? They were sacrificed and killed last night in satanic rituals. I don't know how many, but I can tell you the whole nation and the whole world was in agony last night. While you and I slept peacefully, babies, children, and adults were killed. And God had to watch it while you and I were sleeping. We play games with Halloween. It's not a game. It's life or death. God's not going to put up with it much longer. And God is indignant with His people because He's seeing the pain. He's hearing the pain. When Moses said, Lord, send somebody else. 4 times Moses had had excuses. And God gave him a reason for his excuse. Finally, Moses said, but Lord, my mouth, I can't talk well. And God said, who do you think made your mouth? And finally Moses said, but send somebody else. And God was angry with Moses and told him, I'm sending your brother to be your mouth. Now go and do it. God is angry with his people today. He loves the world so much. God is indignant because his people have been blessed with resources and time. And you know what? We're out of time and we're almost out of resources. God in his mercy is about to wipe out everything we have and said, and this time do it by faith and do it with your fingernails. Because you haven't done it with your resources, I'm going to take away the resources, and this time you're going to do it with your own blood. Brothers and sisters, that's where we're coming to that day very soon. This is serious. We have a little time left. And I have a good news for you today. And I'm going to share this good news. But I want you to understand first that we're talking about the indignation of God at our thoughtlessness of a world dying without Christ, and we don't care. You say, but David, we care. Oh, yeah, you do care. It's like somebody coming hungry and naked, and you say, may God bless you, leave in peace. Jesus himself said that. Somebody comes hungry and naked, and you don't give them clothes and don't give them food, but you send them on their way. The nation is dying without God and without food, and we say, be at peace, God bless you, we pray for you every Sabbath. But when do we send the food and when do we send the clothes? Oh, well, ADRA does that. Oh, come on. ADRA can't do all the work. And besides, many people get clothing and food from ADRA, but they never get to know Jesus. Somebody has to go and spend time with them talking about Jesus, not just giving them food too. We need Bible workers. Who's going to pay for that? God has given enough money to his church in North America to finish the entire world work. And approximately 30 years ago, the North American division made a decision. Because the number of members are increasing all over the world, and because the majority of the vote is no longer the American vote, and because the allocation of funds depends on the vote of the General Conference at session, we're going to let you have the vote, but we're just going to keep our money at home, thank you. And instead of us paying for everything and we don't control the vote, you can vote anything you want to, but the money stays in North America. And about 30 years ago, North America began spending money on itself. Let the world, let Africa do what they want to. Take the vote. You got millions of members. Let Inter-America, let South America do what they want to. But in North America, we're going to keep our money and we're going to build summer camps for our children. We're going to take care of ourselves for once. And the moment we did that, we committed suicide. We stopped sending because Sister White says the health of the church at home depends to a great extent on how we take care of the work in far-off countries. When we made that decision, we started closing down. We reduced the giving overseas. We started closing hospitals. We started closing schools. Of course, we heard to work overseas too because they didn't have money either. Because the part of the work that depended on money, God gave that responsibility to North America. And when North America said, we won't give, they started dying overseas. And when North America says, we won't give, we started dying at home too. We've closed more schools, hospitals, even churches around the world and in North America because of our lack of giving. And as a result, a couple of years ago, Florida had to lay off 20 pastors. California laid off 20 pastors. We're closing down. The General Conference budget is tighter and tighter each year. Yes, the world economics is affecting it, but you know what? God's blessing could overrule world economics. The world economics does not rule God's blessing. And what I'm about to share with you is exciting news that will overrule the whole economic situation and turn it upside down. I'm going to share that with you. I'm glad you came today. But I want to tell you something. It is our fault, our selfishness, that's the reason we're in trouble today economically. God has always intended for his people to be the head and not the tail. And because we don't give overseas to finance the work, God has allowed us to enter financial distress in North. The richest division in the world is in financial distress. It was never God's intention. After the plagues in Egypt, the poor nation of Israel, slaves without anything, became one of the wealthiest nations. The whole entire country of Egypt threw its wealth at Israel, and they walked out with all the gold and all the silver and all the jewels. God, at the very moment of distress, can pour riches into the coffers of the church. But if we're not found faithful with what we already have, we're going to lose, take away even that which we do have. So therefore, that is the basis for what we're going to study today. I would like for you to turn with me to Revelation 6 for a very quick view. Revelation 5, a quick summary. There's a throne room. There's somebody sitting on the throne, God the Father. He has in his hand a book, a scroll with how many seals on it? 7 seals. John sees the seals and cries because no man is found worthy to open it. You see, that's the history of the great controversy. If you can't open the evidence, you can't close the court case. There can be no conclusion to the great controversy as long as that book is sealed. And John cries. Verse 4, I wept much because no man was found worthy to open or read, neither to look thereon. The evidence is closed. No man can see the evidence which vindicates God. But then one of the elders comes and says, weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the 4 elders stood a lamb as it had been slain. Who is that lamb? Jesus, the lamb slain from the beginning of the world, is found worthy through his own blood. And the elder says, don't cry anymore, don't weep, because suddenly somebody has been found worthy. The lamb, the lion, has been found worthy. And Jesus starts to take off the scrolls. And as he does, the evidence is laid out to the whole universe of the justice of God and vindicates his character one by one by one. And that's where we enter Revelation 6. And you have the seals coming off. I'm not going to focus a lot on this because I want to present the other, and I've already presented it in other sermons, even though I'm going to go briefly through this, because what we're about to study has an impact based on what we read here. Good news ahead, but there's also bad news ahead. First, let me ask you some questions. Is it biblical and according to the spirit of prophecy to say that the coming crisis will be worse than anything ever seen in human history? More than we can imagine? Okay. Would you also agree with me, since the 7 seals, we teach in the Seventh-day Adventist Church that these seals represent what has happened throughout history, a historical point of view, but since they end in Jesus' coming, would you say it is compatible with the spirit of prophecy to believe that events found in these scrolls represent events also happening in the future? Because it finishes with the second coming. It has to go right through our time, correct? And Sister White said that everything that happened in the future will be repeated again in the latter days, in the past. Okay. So what we're going to read, I'm not going to focus on it. We already know throughout history the persecution. We know about the slain. We know about the persecution of the early Christian church. We know about all of that, and it represents all of that. But there is also going to be a series of events happening that also in our time that will rapidly repeat all of that in the most worsening in the scenarios that we have ever imagined. And I just want to take you through this in a very rapid way so that we can then be focused on the other part that I want to bring to you. I've been teaching for some years that we're living in white horse time. I came to that conclusion. The first seal, if you look at it here, the Lamb opens the first seals, and he heard, as it were, a noise of the thunder, and the 4 beasts saying, and one of the 4 beasts said, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. I read that, and I said, Lord, this expresses my experience. Everywhere I go, God is giving us monopoly. I went to Guyana. We had the very first airplane there, and we operated on a temporary permit. The government said, the government is kind of like a secular Hindu government, and they said, we don't want a missionary airplane. Don't even bother coming with an airplane. But I just kept going forward, and finally I got my commercial license down in Guyana. I converted my U.S. system, took all the exams, took the flight exams. Finally I got my license. And then I went to get an airplane, and God provided that little airplane. I brought it, and they said, we don't want you to fly in Guyana. Don't you understand? I said to myself, I told them, yes, I understand, but I'm bringing the airplane anyhow. The reason I did that is because I was understanding that nobody can stop God right now. So I brought the airplane. And did you know that the very day that I landed in Guyana with the airplane, I was given authorization to operate for 90 days? This has never happened before. And then after the 90 days were out, they extended another 90 days, and then they wouldn't extend it at all. And then God allowed us to buy an airplane locally. We bought it with no money again. I ran across the ramp. It was the only airplane that had come for sale in Guyana, a little tiny country. I bought the only airplane that was for sale, And that's how we were able to own a Guyanese registered airplane. And based on that, the government gave us an approval during the election because they were being accused of not caring for the Indians because nobody gives David Gates permission. And the Prime Minister said on open television, have David Gates come to my office. I will give him. I care for the Indians. He didn't want to lose the election. I went to the office. The president wouldn't receive me, but he sent down information. Go to Civil Aviation. Your permission is waiting on you. And for the first time in 30 years, and until now, no other church has had a national operating permit to operate in the full country, access to the country of Guyana. We have a monopoly in Guyana for until today, 12 years later. In the last 30 years, we're the only church that got that. So I began to see something. God is willing to make his people the head and not the tail again. I love monopolies. Not just Bill Gates, David Gates also. I love monopolies because when God's people are the head and not the tail, truth goes everywhere. And so I look at that and I just said, I've never experienced this before. I'm used to the Adventist church being the last. I'm used to the Adventist church being put down. I'm used to the Adventist church having the last TV station in town or not having one at all. I'm used to all the evangelicals having stations, but the Adventist church still don't have one. I'm used to being the last, and I don't like it. And when I went to talk to the evangelical brethren, I said, where did you get the money? We didn't have it. We just went forward by faith, they said. Why can't Adventists go forward? I finally came to the conclusion, we don't have any faith. We're used to having a budget, and if it's not in a budget, we can't do it, brethren. And God doesn't operate that way. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So if the evangelicals can have faith, Lord, give me faith. And so I went forward by faith to Guyana, and I learned the basic lessons, and we got the network in Bolivia. We have the largest. We have nearly 20 stations broadcasting. We started with 6, now it's 20. No other church has national television access. Monopoly in Bolivia, monopoly in Guyana. Then we went to Venezuela. The door was open for a while. We put in our aviation program. 19 other missionary airplanes operated in Guyana. The government Chavez started swinging everything to the communism, swinging left. And as they swung left, they threw out the Mormons. They closed all the mission aviation programs. And then they came to close the Adventists. And you know what? They were unable to close our program. And today we are the only church operating with a mission aviation program in the entire country of Venezuela. Monopoly in Guyana, monopoly in Bolivia, monopoly in Venezuela. And I love it. I suddenly realized, Lord, everything we do succeeds. How can we explain this? And God led me to this. And he went forth conquering, and it doesn't say partially to conquer. The white horse is not about failure. It is about total conquest. Who rides the white horse? Christ rides it. King going forth to warfare with a weapon of war and authority. It is time to finish the work. And of course, I ended my sermons by saying, someday soon, the red horse will come. And that was my sermon for a long time. And then one day I said, Lord, I'm sorry. I'm not willing to continue that sermon. You got to tell me what this means. And the Lord said, well, why don't you start reading? You might learn something. So I just started reading through the Revelation. He said, the least you can do is read through Revelation. You can't learn anything unless you at least read it. So I went from Revelation, I went through. Of course, I have it all marked up. I mean, it's more black than white. And I had it marked up, but I hadn't been reading to really find out new things. I'd been reading to try to understand what we've always known. I said, now it's time for me to understand what we're really talking about here. How does the white horse apply to me? It guarantees me that everywhere I go, nobody can stop the message. That's what the white horse tells me today. And that's why, at this point, anywhere in the world I go with total confidence. My wife and I were landing in Bolivia. We just got back from 3 weeks in Australia, but we had been in South America just before that. We flew down to Bolivia, and we landed in the northern border, and we were going into the capital city of Santa Cruz, which is the capital for the state of Santa Cruz, where our TV network is. And everybody told me, David, don't go there. The city is circled by the native Indians, armed to the teeth with weapons that Venezuela flew in on their military planes, and they're assaulting the city. Tomorrow will be bloodshed everywhere. Don't go to Santa Cruz. And I said, but I have to go to Santa Cruz. I got work to do. But that tomorrow will be bloodshed. They've already cut off the food. They've already cut off the gasoline. They're cutting off the water supply. Tomorrow, David, you may go right into the eye of the hurricane and get killed. You know what my response was? So let God make the hurricane disappear. Why could I say that? Because of this one verse. So my wife and I got in the airplane, and we did fly to Santa Cruz. And before we landed the plane there 3 hours later, the government of Chile, the president, communicated to the president of Bolivia, you better call those native people away from there, because this is not democratic, and if you're going to violate people's rights with a revolution, don't count on any of our support. You've already lost Brazil's support. You've lost Peru's support. We're the only ones standing with you. You better not lose our support. And by the time we landed, everybody had gone home. How can I be so certain? Because of the white horse. It's conquering time. The city can be surrounded totally by enemy forces, and you can with comfort land right in the middle in the eye of the hurricane, and poof, the hurricane goes away. Try it. That's the beauty of being in white horse time. You want to learn a little about the red horse? You want to follow that? What's coming next? Let's read. Verse 4. And there went out another horse that was red, the second seal, and power was given unto him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. I'd like to point out the first thing here. Power was given unto him. Well, actually, the word power is not in the original, so just say it was given unto him, or we could say authority. He was authorized to take peace from the earth. Does God need somebody to authorize him to do anything? So who's riding the horse? Satan. The devil has to ask permission, doesn't he? Every time he does something, he has to go to the corner. Is it okay with you? Aren't you glad to serve God? The devil might have power, but he only has power that is given to him to authorize to do something. He only operates by permission. So it says, authority was granted unto this rider to take peace from the earth. There is a time coming very soon that God will turn to Satan and say, it's your turn. Go ahead. And Satan will take peace from it, and there will be random, chaotic violence and death throughout the whole world. A great sword was given unto him. I don't think we understand the depth of this pain. All we know is that authority was granted to him that men should kill one another. You want to see men kill each other? Men will bomb cities. Men will put biological warfare, nuclear warfare, chaotic violence. Cities will go down. Countries will be fighting each other. We have not seen the likes of this before. It's about to happen very soon, and you're in a short period of time. In your lifetime, in my lifetime. Not in 50 years either. Would you rather work during the white horse time, or do you want to wait till the red horse? You don't have too much time. If you're going to work, do it now. Is that clear? Sister White tells us that what we don't do during the time of peace, we will have to do during the most oppressive and difficult of times. I'd rather do it now. Total commitment now. You cannot lose. If Satan is scared to death that you will find out the truth about the white horse, if God's people would actually discover the fact that Satan cannot stop you right now, if they were actually were to wake up, and if they were to go to work right now, they would discover experientially, like I have, they cannot fail. Impossible. Take any country on. Success, success, success. Everywhere you go, if you do it God's way, in obedience to him, put everything on the altar and trust in God, you cannot lose. Which country do you want? I told God, I want China, please. God said, I told Joshua, wherever you put the sole of your foot, David, if you want China, you got to go there. So I got off the airplane and I went. And that's when I met Randy and his wife, Julia. They were in China, and we've been working on a plan, a media center there, multiple plans, another program in Taiwan, another one in Hong Kong, any way we can, and God is prospering. And when the time comes for China to open, we're already going to be in media, on Chinese satellite. We're going to be head and not the tail. When God says, okay, China, open the doors, guess who's going to be at the very top? Seventh-day Adventists. How do we know that? Because we happen to know The white horse secret. Isn't that beautiful? It's a beautiful truth. Don't miss it. Everything you have, everything you are, right now. You miss this opportunity, if you survive, you'll have to do it all during the red horse. What a stupid decision that would be, to lose this opportunity, to plant so many seeds. Okay, let's go on. Verse 5, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse. And he that sat upon him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice from the midst of the four beasts, that's God's throne in the midst of the four beasts. You could say, and I heard a voice of God saying, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see you hurt not the oil and the wine. I've read that a lot of times, hundreds of times, and I go, interesting. Next. Very first thing we need to analyze is who's riding his horse. Does it say that authority was granted, power was granted unto him? Yes or no? No. Whoever's riding his horse doesn't need to ask permission from anybody. Okay? And he has a pair of balances in his hand. Have you ever seen a lady blindfolded holding a pair of balances? What's that represent? Blind justice. Who is the ultimate judge of the universe? Satan is never cast in a judge position, ever. Is this a judgment scene? A pair of balances? Absolutely. When did the judgment begin? In the past, 1844. Does it go through into the future? Yes. So the conclusion of this judgment happens when? In the future. It hasn't finished yet, has it? One of these days, our names will be there, correct? Every single person will be judged, is that correct? Nobody will be left out. So the judgment process, here signified by the black horse, is the finishing of the judgment process where every single case is decided. It finishes in the future when the investigative judgment finishes with the cases of the living. Every single being will be judged. Is that clear? Who's riding the horse? God is riding his horse. By the way, when I was in Australia, the politics in Australia are very interesting. They have an equal airtime philosophy. The prime minister comes on and says this, and the other. And then they turn and they give the opposition leader equal time. I thought, that's really nice. Imagine, the president of the country speaks for North America. And now we turn to the leader of the Democratic Party. You get your equal airtime too, sir or ma'am. Very interesting. So every time the prime minister speaks, the opposition also has airtime. God happens to model his government closer to the Australian way. He comes on a white horse, then he turns and says, equal airtime, sir. And then God says, now it's my turn. And when he's done, he turns and says, now it's your turn. Because if God were to take a monopoly on all the visibility, would not Satan accuse him of being partial and unjust? So God can't do anything that would be considered to be unjust, right? So whatever liberties God takes, he also allows Satan liberties also. So that Satan cannot accuse him, you just abused your power and you took all the visibility. I wasn't able to do anything. No. Satan will be unchained and allowed to do what he has to do someday. But right now, it's not his time yet. He's still limited. Okay? So let's look at the implications of this. It's a judgment scene. That's clear, right? How many cases are decided? I'm leading you down the path, so be careful what you say. You sure every single person, right? Will every case be decided? Well, everybody. Okay? Okay, good. We all agree on that. Now, what's interesting here is there's a voice coming of God in between the four beasts. That's where God's throne is, in between the four beasts. According to Revelation 5, verse 6, you see the throne surrounded by the four beasts. So this is God speaking here. And this is what he says. A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see you hurt not the oil of the wine. Immediately, you can see the following. You have a pair of balances. You have wheat on one side, and you have barley on the other. And then an order saying, but hurt not the oil or the wine. Well, immediately when that says that, you go, somebody's about to get hurt. Correct? Because if you get an order, don't hurt the oil or the wine, then you have to assume it's okay to hurt something else, correct? Now, can you imagine a measure of wheat on one side and 3 measures of barley on the other. Can you imagine the balances? All cases in the whole entire world are decided. Every single case has been decided. And the interesting thing here is you have 1 measure of wheat and 3 measures of barley. Now, barley, according to the SDA commentary, is a common food, a cheap food. Sometimes it's used like the 5 barley loaves, used in a positive light. Wheat is always represented for God's people. The wheat and the tares. When I first read that, I was stunned at the implications. When every case after the red horse comes, every living being left on the earth, the judgment finishes with them, and then, to everybody's surprise, 1/4, according to this, 1/4 wheat, 3/4 barley, 1/4 of the entire living population on the earth chooses God's way. I wasn't thinking it was going to be that big. I was thinking, well, maybe 1 in 100. But Sister White says, when the loud cry goes out, she says it will be a tremendous harvest of souls. And I'm going to show you another verse in the Bible, which we've always quoted. We didn't understand the implications. I'm going to that in a minute. But do you realize that when a loud cry goes out, there's going to be a tremendous harvest of souls? Apparently, 1/4, according to this. Now, we still have more to learn. God may bring out some more things that will help us to understand even more. He will, in fact. It's not maybe He will. He will. He's opening slowly, and you can sometimes peek through the crack, right? We're only peeking through the crack. Daniel and Revelation are being opened, and we're understanding more and more and more what it means as we get closer to the end. All of a sudden, the crack gets bigger, and God is opening up, because 1 Thessalonians 5:4 says, "But ye, brethren, are not of darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief." God is not intending to surprise His people. He wants us to understand what is happening. And He never does anything without first revealing it to His servants, the prophets. So, here we have 1/4 of the earth respond in a massive, positive way to the invitation of God's people. Well, come in to the wedding feast of the Lamb. Now, in another sermon I presented, I show evidence that the 144,000 are the bride of Christ. First of all, because Sister White mentions clearly that that's New Jerusalem is the bride of Christ. And Revelation 3, verse 14 says, "Those that overcome, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God, and they will go in and out no more. And I will write upon them my new name, and I will write upon them the name of the city of my God, which is descended out of God. No, I'm sorry, which is the New Jerusalem. And I will write upon them my new name." So this group that overcomes at the end of time will have the name of the Father, New Jerusalem, and the name of the Son. Not only that, we are told in early writings, page 119 and 20, that only the 144,000 can even enter the temple. Do you remember that verse? Jesus held up His lovely voice and said, only the 144,000 may enter this place. So there's only one group of people that have the name of the Father written on their forehead. Revelation 7 and 14 say they're called 144,000. Are you following me? And only one group of people, the same group, has the name New Jerusalem. So when Sister White says Jesus finishes, all case has been decided, the close of probation, He takes off His robes of a high priest and puts on the robe of a king. He goes into where His Father is, and He's married to the New Jerusalem. Who does He marry? The city? Did Jesus give His life for the city? Did Jesus become one flesh with the city? No. Nobody ever marries a city. Jesus became one flesh with humans. And He's going to marry humans. His church. Which church? Those that have His name. And just by description, they not only have His name and His Father's name, they also have the name New Jerusalem, which is why He marries a New Jerusalem. And they live inside the temple. When a wife marries a husband, does she usually go live in the house with her husband? Huh? Which group lives in the house? The 144,000. And by the way, they follow the Lamb everywhere He goes. Even 1,000,000 years from now, when there's an appointment in heaven and Jesus goes to planet X to visit, lo and behold, there's the cloud. There are the angels. And who's that with Him? Oh, that's His bride. You see, Jesus is never going to be separated from His bride again. Do you think every time Jesus travels, He's going to empty the whole earth and take all the people with Him? No. They're over there planting, building houses, taking care of vineyards. But his wife is a different story. His wife will travel with him. And by the way, Sister White also says, if you are a guest, you cannot be the bride. Will there be a lot of guests in heaven to the banquet feast of the Lamb? Will there be guests? And if you're a guest, you cannot be a bride. Oh, excuse me. Something is very clear here. So therefore, the 144,000, having the name of the Father, having the name of the New Jerusalem, and having the name of the Son, they take on their husband's name. And the husband puts his name on his bride. And he marries the New Jerusalem, which is a symbol, comes down out of heaven, chapter 21, verse 2. And I, John, saw the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven as a bride, adorned for her husband. The New Jerusalem is a symbol of Christ's bride, perfect, without spot or wrinkle. But it's only a symbol. It's a code name. New Jerusalem is a code name for bride. And the bride has the name New Jerusalem. And only the 144,000 have the name New Jerusalem. So they go out to the whole world and they invite the loud cry, the last rain. They invite the whole world to come in to the wedding feast. 1/4 turn out to be wheat. But God says, do not harm, do not hurt the oil or the wine. Oil signifies God's Holy Spirit. Wine signifies righteousness by faith. And there's other symbols, all of them pointing to God's righteousness and his ability to rescue us from sin. And then we have to go on to the next verse, because what I've just told you is about to be corroborated by what we've continued reading. Let me ask you a question. Why did Moses have to die? Because of disobedience. Moses was the only man in history that ever really saw God face to face. Correct? If there was ever a person that ever should have been translated, it should have been Moses. But because of disobedience, he was not allowed to go into Canaan. He had to die. Jesus buried him, and Jesus resurrected him and took him to heaven. Correct? During the loud cry, God's people, anointed by the Holy Spirit, go out. Millions, hundreds of millions, maybe 1 billion people accept the gospel, accept the three angels' messages. They accept. Is there a character ready to stand through the time of without an intercessor? Are they able to stand? Have they had the years of preparation? No. So, like Moses, do you believe that they will have to die also? Is that biblical? Does that meet the spirit of prophecy? You see, there's only two types. There's Elijah and there's Moses. Elijah represents those that have allowed God to so control them, they've surrendered to God's will, that they're able to be controlled by God, and God can tell ahead of time, they are sealed for eternity, they will not sin anymore. They're under my total control. And they can stand throughout the time after the close of probation without an intercessor through the power of Jesus. They don't get credit. God gets all the credit. But the other group that come in, those that are invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb, they haven't had that preparation process. What happens to them? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Or you haven't? Never thought of it? Some will be what? Yes, but it doesn't say that they will be translated. The only ones that we know of that will be translated, it says, and Sister White said, I saw the living saints, 144,000 in number. So, if the living saints, 144,000, have to live after the close of probation without an intercessor, and there's another group that accepted, the group that you mentioned, accepted the salvation, they're loyal to God, they want to keep the Sabbath, they do not receive the mark of the beast, they want to follow the Lamb, even being faithful unto death, because they cannot stand without an intercessor. Their character, like Moses, would have failed during the crisis, and God cannot rest his government because This is the evidence that closes, this is the evidence that vindicates God's character and closes the mouth of Satan forever. God cannot put on that great multitude his final evidence. So they have to, like Moses, go to the tomb first. Only the 144,000 can live through that time. Everybody else must go to the grave. Here we have a group of persons, 1/4 of the entire population of the earth accepts the loud cry and accepts the mark of God by keeping holy the Sabbath. What happens to them? Let's continue reading. Verse 8. And I looked and beheld a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death, and hell followed with him. Did God ever use the name death and hell? Death in the grave, in this case, Hades. Does God ever use that name? No, because he's life, right? So this is probably Satan. Let's keep reading. And it says, and power was given unto him. There's the key word. And authority was granted unto him. So therefore, it's Satan again. You see, God on the white, Satan on the red, God on the black. Now it's Satan's turn again. He rides the pale horse. Power was given in to do what? To kill over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with the sword, with hunger, with death, and with the beasts of the earth. We just finished reading that a 4th part of the earth has accepted the message, and they will stand with God's people at the end of time. They will not accept the mark of the beast. They will be loyal to God. What happens to them? In order to be saved, through God's mercy, he has to allow them to go to the grave. But there's almost 1 billion of them. I don't know how many, because I don't know how many will be at the end of time, but about 1/4 of the earth's population. They have to go to rest. What does God do? He tells Satan, I give you permission to take their life. Can you imagine why Sister White says it's worse than we could even imagine? Because it's such a long process. So difficult, because those that accept the invitation to the banquet must do so with their own blood. Now, if you say to yourself, oh, I want to be part of the 144,000 because I don't want to die, you spoke too fast. Because living will be harder than dying. Sometimes remaining alive during these days can be much more painful and difficult than laying down your life. So don't speak too soon. There's a different reason why we should be part of the 144,000. It is to glorify and honor God. God needs evidence to vindicate his character. He's the accused one. And he's looking for a people that will vindicate his character. That's the real reason why we want to be part of the 144,000. Because God is looking for evidence. Lord, I want to be part of that evidence. You see? So take control of me. So guide me, direct me, fill me, that my every thought, my every action is under your control. And this will vindicate you before the entire universe. That's why I want to be part of the 144,000. Okay? Now, this sounds kind of a tragic, difficult, painful experience. Let's keep reading, because we have to see if the Bible explains itself. Let's continue reading. Verse 9. And when he had opened the 9th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not avenge and judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest a little season until their fellow servants and also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. You see, it just confirms what we just said. Just like the blood of Abel cried out to God, the souls, the blood of these slain, cry out to God. It's not these souls under the altar piled up in little cubicles all smashed together. No. This is a symbol. Souls are not piled up anywhere under the altar. The blood of the slain are crying out for justice. And the altar is a place where they go for justice. And the blood cries out, Lord, how long will you not avenge us? They're killing us and killing us. What's the answer? White robes. You're declared just, but be patient a little longer, because your brethren on earth that are supposed to die, they still have to die first. You understand? Can you see the scenario? God cannot save them. What if God would say, oh, don't kill them? They would sin during the time without an intercessor. They would be lost, and so would all other human beings. God has to allow them to go to the grave in order to save them. So God in his justice says, I'm closing eternity. It's the end of time is at hand. Every single soul must decide. That's why I've often wondered, how can God bring the whole, how can he bring the whole earth to a decision? You know why? Because there's only two groups, those that live and those that die. You want to save your life? You will lose it. You're willing to lose your life? You will save it. You want to keep the Sabbath? You die. It's that simple. You want to keep the Sabbath? You die. And if you say, but I don't want to die, okay, then don't keep the Sabbath. Two choices, right? Except for the 144,000. Except for the oil and the wine. God says, don't hurt them. They have their own trial to go through, but it's not giving up their life. They have a different type of trial. They have to, like Jesus on the cross, they have to be tested in such a way that even at the very extreme, they're still willing to say, unto thy hands I commit my spirit. They have to pass the same trial like Jesus did, except that Jesus did it without the presence of his Father. His Father turned his back on the Son and let him experience a true hell, separation from God. God's people will never experience that kind of death. God's people will not experience that separation, but they do have to experience the faith. They have the faith of Jesus, don't they? Isn't that what it says? The faith of Jesus. And these people have the testimony. So at the very moment when everything is lost and it appears like all has been abandoned, there is no hope, they will die. They say, Lord, we still trust in you. Right in the middle of the time of Jacob's trouble, they still say, we still trust God. And then God says, okay. That's why the angels come to try to rescue them, and the angel says, no, not yet. They have to drink the cup. Why? Because if they don't drink the cup, it cannot be said that they had the same trial as Jesus did. Because Jesus is about to lay them before the universe, right in front of Satan's face. I rest my case. And Satan could say, but they didn't drink the cup. So God says, no, they will drink the cup, and even though they drink that cup, they will be found faithful. And Satan doesn't have anything else to say. Now, immediately following this, you have the sixth seal, which right precedes Jesus' coming. And just in case you didn't understand, a biblical principle of hermeneutics, repeat and amplify. Suddenly chapter 7 comes in here, and it talks about the 144,000, the great multitude, and ends with the 144,000 again. And then we go on with chapter 8, which is the seventh seal. This is, in case you didn't understand, chapter 6 is talking about the 144,000 and the great multitude. That's why we have chapter 7 stuck in here. It repeats and amplifies what you just happened to read. And then it goes on, right in the middle, continuing on with the seventh seal. It's very clear. Now, I want to get to the most beautiful part of this sermon, the good news. The reason I went through this right now is because you had to understand a scenario that's coming up in the future in order to understand the good news that's about to happen now. Turn with me to Joel chapter 2. And this is really what I've been waiting all afternoon to tell you. It's so exciting. Joel chapter 2. You already know what Joel talks about, right? Joel talks about the Holy Spirit. Read with me, verse 23. Be glad, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the former rain moderately, and he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain, and the latter rain in the first month. Is this what fulfillment of what is this fulfilling? The outpouring of the Holy Spirit? The former rain was when? Pentecost. Was it glorious? Was it beautiful? Absolutely. And then God will say, I did it moderately. Only a moderate rain. This time I'm going to really pour it on, and it's called the latter rain. Right? Have we always believed this? Absolutely. Has the latter rain started? It's already started. Has it been poured out in its fullness? Not yet. When we do, it says not until the majority of the church is committed in this message will it happen. But it's already started, and it's already we're seeing a pouring out of that power, and God's conquering earth and going forth conquering and conquer. God is doing it through his Holy Spirit power. Look what follows. What does it say? And the floors shall be filled with wheat, and the fats shall be overflow, and with wine and oil. Now, isn't it interesting that we have the exact same terminology as in Revelation in the third seal. Don't you think it's just interesting? The latter rain has to do with wheat, wine, and oil. Of course, we have the barley on the other side, right? But what is the result of the latter rain? The floors will be filled with wheat and with wine and oil. How beautiful. This is the promise. The floors will be filled. This is talking about the great harvest of the great multitude that will come in. Now, of course, the great multitude also includes all of those that are saved throughout history. But in a very special way, it includes the product of all those that respond to the loud cry. Here we have a promise of God. When the latter rain comes in power, the wheat, all of those of God's children that are not of this fold, that will hear the message and respond positively to the message, to stand with God and be loyal to Him, are represented as wheat. And the floors will be filled with it. We'll have so much, we don't know what to do with it. No wonder the enemy is infuriated at the success of that message. Isn't that beautiful news? Now comes even more. I just wanted you to see the connection. You see the connection, right? Exactly the same symbology of Revelation 6. And it comes as a result of the loud cry. That's why the wheat is harvested, and then, of course, the 144,000 represent the oil and the wine. Okay, what comes next? It says here, and I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, and the cankerworm, and the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. God calls the worms His army. And He promised, He says, I sent them among you. For the last 30 years, God has sent worms among us. There used to be a lot more aviation programs, a lot more schools, a lot more hospitals, a lot more clinics 30 years ago than we have today. We've been closing down. And even though you don't read about it in our publications because it's not nice to write about, who wants to focus on the shutting down process? Let's talk about the good things that are happening. Is there good things happening? Of course there's good things happening. But institutionally, we have been hurt very badly. In Denmark, a couple of years ago, they closed down 5 of the biggest churches they have in Denmark. They just said there's not enough members, let's sell them. And they just put a sign, closed, and they sold. We're consuming the very blessing that we've grown, we're eating it up again. It's like when you're starving to death and you eat up your very muscle. First you eat up the fat. Some of us have a little bit we could give up. I don't, but some of us do. And then we start consuming the muscle. Now when you start eating up your muscle, hey, by the way, the brain, the body is so smart that when it starts eating up the muscle, it doesn't touch the heart muscle. Because the body says, don't touch that muscle, you need it. Isn't that such a, God is such a genius? So you lose your non-important muscles first, and the very last thing, of course, to go is the heart. And so we've been consumed. For 30 years, we've been focusing on our needs and putting on luxurious this and luxurious that and big lakes and big cabins and this and the other and all kinds of stuff. And our conferences have been trying to care for our youth, and instead our youth are walking out the back door. So we decided to change the music, and we decided to put in worldly rhythms to keep the young people, and that doesn't keep them in. They just walk out the door still. The only thing that really keeps young people today, we've now learned, the only thing that keeps young people is mission-driven youth. You give them hard work to do, put them in risky situations, give them a big task to do, heavy responsibilities, that keeps the youth. And pure music does more to keep youth than impure music anyway. In one of the countries I visited, the youth were encouraged to dance to the music. And they said, if you dance, we will give you an Easter egg. Chocolate, if you dance. And right in the middle of the youth camp, they were dancing and dancing, and everybody got their chocolate. The youth, you could say, should have known better. But you know what? The leaders who encouraged them should have known better. The responsibility lies with us adults. We have allowed worldliness to come in. God has withdrawn His blessing, and the worms started eating up. And pretty soon, there goes one blessing. We better close that hospital. We better shut down that school. We better shut down here. We better shut down that. And the worms have just been eating away, and we've been closing down, closing down, closing down. And the beautiful thing about this promise is, do you know that God's about to turn it around and give it all back to us? He said, I will restore to you the days, the years, that the locust has eaten. 30 years, the locust has been eating up the Seventh-day Adventist Church. because of our fault. We have forfeited God's blessing and protection because we have disobeyed him. But God is going to return it all back. Now, this is what I'm going to tell you about the Lazarus experience. 4 years ago, we were living in Austria. I was speaking all around Europe. I had just come back from Brazil. I signed an intent to buy a network for $18.5 million. They contacted me, made the offer. I accepted. I went to Chile. I signed another document, $4 million. I thought, Lord, the whole country of Chile for sale for only $4 million. 80% visibility on that television network of the whole entire, Chile's that long, the spinal cord of South America, spinal column. So to reach a country that long, 80% of the population, what a beautiful miracle. So I decided I'm not going to miss this opportunity. I signed the document. Went to Brazil, signed the document. I went to Europe. A man called me and said, I want to talk to you afterward. He came to me and he said, what are your needs? I said, like what? Airplane engines, airplanes? No. What is the biggest thing you need? Was it like how big are you talking about? I have a lot of things I'm praying about. No, I want to know about Brazil. I will, okay, but 18.5 million. He said, okay, I'll pay for it. I knew he could. I knew God could. God had promised to do everything. Ask and it shall be given, right? I said, Lord, I want Brazil. I won't take no for an answer. I want Brazil. I want Brazil. And like the widow of the unjust judge, I would not let God off the hook. Because God loves Brazilians. Doesn't he? Okay. So I said, that great country, the United States of South America, I want that country, Lord. And God said, you can have it. And I signed the document. And this man, I said, I'll pay. What else do you need? I said, I need Chile, $4 million. I'll pay for that too. What else do you need? Where are you getting your money? And he said, I have a pretty big company. And he said, the government has approved 100 of us companies, the biggest companies in the country, to receive low-interest loans for 100 million euros. And I'm going to give half of it to you. Actually, it was 90 million euros, half of it to you. Half of it for missions. You can use it to pay for God's work anywhere. Lord, I knew you were going to do it. Thank you, Lord. He said, I don't have to pay it back for 15 years. And my company can easily handle the interest. I can just pay the interest and roll it over again for another 15 years. David, do God's work. So I was so thrilled. I went home, told my wife. My wife said, let's pray about it first. We prayed, and God impressed us. He said, I will give the heathen of the earth for your inheritance. And so we knew this money originated from heathen sources, in other words, from non-Christian countries. And so we said, God is giving us a heathen for an inheritance. So we said yes. 2 weeks later, my wife is reading. By the way, I'm a sanguine. I speak a lot, so I like to pray. My wife is a listener. She likes to read. So she's sitting there in bed reading and reading. While I'm unloading. Lord, don't forget Brazil, Lord, and Peru and Bolivia. And oh, yes, over there in Europe, I need this. And Lord, oh, yes, Africa, Lord, Africa. Mongolia, Lord, don't forget the Philippines. And I go through my whole list. And I unload every day because the projects are so big and there's so many responsibilities that I can't carry the load. So I always unload it every day on God's shoulders, and then I'm light all day long. It takes me an hour to do that every day. So while I'm unloading on God, she's listening to God. And she told me, David, guess what? I just read about Lazarus, and I feel convicted that we're going to go through an experience similar to Lazarus. We're not going to get the money. We're going to be going through a very difficult time financially, but at the end will come the resurrection. Now, you remember Mary and Martha's responses when Lazarus died? Martha said, Lord, if you had only been here, my brother would not have died. Is that true? Is that true? If Jesus would have been there, did anybody die in Jesus' presence? Can you die in the presence of the life giver? No, death can't even get close. So when Jesus was there, nobody died. So if Jesus would have come, it would have been impossible for Lazarus to die. So Martha was correct. But she added a word of faith. But I know that even now, anything you ask your Father, He will give it to you. A beautiful statement of faith, right? Jesus promised her that He would be resurrected. I know, Lord, at the last day. But Martha expressed faith in Jesus. Mary came. Lord, if you not have been here, my brother would not have died. Oh, oh, oh. And Jesus agonized in his soul. Why? Because Mary expressed no faith. She just said, Lord, you failed us, basically. If you would have been here, but you didn't come, it's your fault. What would have happened if Mary and Martha would have known what was about to happen? Do you think they would have agonized so much? They would have said, it was painful to lose our brother, but don't worry, Jesus is coming. I determined to have the response of Mary and Martha if I would have known, like if they would have known. So, you mean we're not going to get the money? Okay, Lord, I'll wait. It's painful, but the resurrection is coming. I'm just going to have faith in you. 2 weeks later, the man called and said, David, the laws have changed. Some of our companies got the money, and the rest of us didn't. I can't send you anything. Never mind, I knew it wasn't coming anyhow. He said, it's okay? Yeah. It's painful, but it's okay. I called Brazil and said, I can't go through with it. No, we'll wait for you, David. We want you to. I can't go through with it. They waited for 6 months, and they finally sold it to somebody else. 18 stations. Chile. I called Chile. I'm not going to be able to go forward with it. Are you sure? Yes. But that's not. You've already made a down payment. I'm sorry. I can't go forward with it. And we didn't. They sold it to somebody else. And it's like losing. It's like gaining an opportunity, seizing it, only to say, let go. You catch a fish. Let go. That was hard. But guess what? I knew the resurrection was coming. So I bit my lip. The next year, our donations went down. The next year, our donations went down again. Strangely enough, our projects kept on growing. More airplanes, more schools, but with our fingernails. I mean, every single month, we'd have a minimum needs list, and we'd never make the minimum needs. But somehow, God made it. None of them died. They just kept on growing and growing. But the work in Brazil, we had to let that go, and we had to let go of the Chile proposal, opportunity. 2005, 2006, 2007, and we're still going forward at about 60% of our donations that we used to have previously. The work had grown bigger, our needs were bigger, the donations were down. 2007, my administrative assistant calls me and said, David, a day for a year. The resurrection is going to be in 2008. I said, how do you know that? Lazarus lay in a tomb for 4 days. In the Bible, a piece of a day is considered, Jesus was in a tomb for 3 days, right? Part of Friday, Sabbath, part of Sunday. He said, part of 2005, 2006, 2007, the fourth day, the fourth year will be the resurrection. Interesting. Glad to know that. I don't have any convictions one way or the other, but I'm glad you do. I went home and said, guess what? I said, Norbert just called me and told me that he believes the resurrection is going to be in 2008. And my wife kind of hung her head and said, I didn't tell you this, but I feel that too. I'm convicted that it will be 2008. You too? Yeah. Well, this is making a little more sense, because God doesn't just reveal his will through one person. He does a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and pretty soon you get the idea, but God works with multiple people. And so I was encouraged. But 2008 is quickly running out. That's okay. This was a much better year than last year, by the way. But it's still not, the explosion hasn't happened. But we started gaining confidence and momentum and enthusiasm, energy. And so I started getting ready for the big explosion. October came around. We had to go to Australia. And I was coming through Brazil. And just as I was coming through Brazil, I got up early in the morning. The Lord woke me up and said, David. Yes, is that you, Lord? I said, David, I just wanted to tell you, it's only days away. What is? The resurrection. It's only days away. Lord, you mean infinite resources only a day away? No, not a day, days away. Yes, it's only in a few days. Thank you, Lord. Are you sure that's you? Isn't it the same voice that told you 1.5 million? Yes. So, what's the problem with you? No, Lord. No, Lord. I just wanted to make sure that was you. Again, it's in your mind. Sometimes, most of the time, God speaks through his word, but sometimes people, many of the prisoners that came back from Vietnam that were in solitary confinement, 7 years in solitary confinement, can you imagine how painful that would be? Some of them went through 6 or 7 years. They'll guarantee to you that they talk to God. When you're in solitary confinement, you don't have anybody else to talk to. There's no noise. Just quiet time. And when you have quiet time, God easily gets through to you. It's when you have boom, 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 movie, music, business, school, food. So many things in life, you can't hear God. You're too busy. Too much noise. But solitary confinement will do wonders for you. So go spend quiet time with God, won't you? Don't make God put you in solitary confinement. Just voluntarily spend quiet time with God, and you'll start hearing God's voice. So God said, in a few days, David, a few more days. Well, I told my wife, and I said, it'll be in a few days. I went to Australia. I shared this in one of the churches. The pastor of the church, the next morning, knocked on my door. David, I got to tell you something. God woke me up last night at 4:30. He said, get out of bed and start thanking me for what I'm about to do. Lord, what do I thank you for? Well, Lord, the new property that we're trying to put the new school on, that we're already here, we still owe $1.4 million on the property. Thank you. No, you're thanking me for too little. Thank me for much more. Well, Lord, thank you for all of Australia. Thank you for giving me all of Australia. No, Sam. Don't thank me just for Australia. Thank me for more. Well, Lord, thank you for the South Pacific. Okay, I'll take that, but I still think you're thinking too little. So he told me, David, God woke me up. He told me to pray. I started to pray. He said, no, get out of bed and get on your knees. Oh, yes, Lord. So he went to his office. He knelt down, and the Lord rebuked me for thinking too little. Then I said, give me Australia. No, too little. Well, Lord, then South Pacific, all the islands. Okay, Sam, but still, you don't understand what I'm about to do. You're thinking too little. David, I just wanted to share with you, God is going to pour out the resources, infinite resources, very soon. He had me thank him, not ask him. Thank him ahead of time. That was sounding familiar to my experience in Bolivia, right? Thank me for what I'm about to do. Do you remember the story? When God's about to do something, he says, by faith, thank me. So Sam told me that. Well, then that same day, my assistant called me, and he said, David, I was studying God's word, and I had very clear impressions. He said, from the Lord on this one, it's going to happen in early November. I said, Lord, thank you for those encouragement from humans. You spoke to me, you spoke to Sam, you spoke to Norbert. But you know what? Lord, can you give it to me in writing, please? Give it to me in writing, because this is too big. I want to make plans. I want to tell everybody, but give it to me in writing. And just last week, we were reading here the story of Joel, his prophecies, and God said, I will restore to you the years that the locust ate. I said, Lord, for 30 years, the church has been closing institutions, closing aviation programs, closing medical work around the world, closing schools, selling churches. 30 years, the locust has taken away. David, what I'm going to give you back will be not just restored to 30 years. You can have much more, an explosion all over the world. Lord, thank you. I got it in writing. Can you see why I'm so enthusiastic? I got it in writing from the Lord. Not only 3 people, now I have it directly. God's going to restore back everything we've lost and much more. So I contacted my project directors, nearly 50 of them, and I said, start making your budgets. Anything that you can imagine that you need to do to advance God's work. You see, the nice thing about being a volunteer is once you give up everything, God knows he can trust you with anything. Because if you're not willing to give up your house or your car or your comfortable job, why would God trust you with $10 million? You might stick some in your pocket. Are you following the logic? You stuck the other stuff in your pocket. If you're not faithful in a little bit, how can you be faithful in a lot? You see, what God is looking for is people he can trust to be perfectly transparent. Everything you receive from heaven, take out your food money and pass the rest of it on. That's how the universe operates. When it rains, the ground takes a little bit and gives it to the river. The river takes a little bit. The river takes a little bit and hands it to the ocean. The ocean turns it right back to the sky. The sky turns it right back to the ground. The whole entire universe works on a principle of giving. You just barely take your minimum needs, and 100% of the rest of it goes right on to the rest of the work. But we humans, we're different. We stick it in our savings account. We stick it in our retirement accounts. We buy properties. Why? We're trying to take care of our needs for the future. You understand what I'm talking about, right? So God is about to do this, and I wanted it in writing. So I wrote to everybody, and they started sending back pilots would say, David, one pilot said, I need 25 airplanes for Africa because I'm going to put 1 or 2 airplanes in every single country in Africa. He has only 1 right now, and he travels day and night across Africa. He said, I need 1 or 2 in every country. And then my media people said, we have opportunities to buy up networks. And they started writing them all down. The orphanage. We need a school. We need another orphanage. The other schools would say, we need this. We need a school of evangelism. And so they started dreaming, and they sent me the list. And when I saw the list, I almost died. It was too little. You want me to tell you how much it was? A measly $300 million. Can you conquer the earth with $300 million? Good night. Some airplanes cost more than that when you're talking about the military. One television network, 2 years ago, sold for $1.2 billion in Australia. And we're talking the entire planet for only $300 million. I wrote back and said, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? Lord, forgive us. We have this little brain mentality. If you're going to pour out the resource, there's Adventists I can put $300 million in there. I know of at least 4 Adventists I could put down $300 million if God told them to. I don't know if they would or not, but they have it. And so if one human has that much, then it's too little. Do something that only God can do. So we started over again, and this time we thought of everything. Like, what would it take to buy a television network, a national television network in the United States? What if NBC came up for sale? Huh? And now you're beginning to understand what God is willing to do. National visibility with truth. Are you understanding? You've got to think as big as God thinks. God is wanting to conquer the earth, and he's not wanting to think small. So we started saying, one television network in Australia, 1 here and 1 there, and we started trying to come up like this, and now it's looking a little bit better. The list is up to $3 billion right now. Now, God could use Bill Gates. I've met Bill Gates twice. But he may or may not. That is none of my business. An angel could talk to Bill Gates, and he'd give me a call tomorrow and say, what do you need? I feel impressed to call you. What if I told him $300 million? You know what he would say? Oh, I thought you were a big organization. But when I tell him I need $3 billion immediately and I need $5 billion next year, what would Bill Gates say? Sure. You understand? It's not hard to do what God wants to do. But now, this is the good news. This is going to happen very soon, in a few days. And it's not just for me. It also applies to you. Can God trust you with resources to carry on his work? Have you laid everything on the altar? Or are you holding back on God? Is he able to use you to conquer the world? Or are you still trying to figure out how to take care of your own heart? You see what God is dealing with? He wants to do it. He has the money. He's planned. By the way, let me just show you on political side. For the last 3 or 4 years, the United States government and the governments in Europe and Rome have been making up master lists of organizations that are going contrary to the way Rome wants to go. They don't call them terrorist lists. They call them extremist lists. Have you noticed the subtle change in the wording? I was in Spain last year, and I read the newspaper, and it said, the Vatican has issued a communique saying that anybody that disagrees with Rome should be arrested and prosecuted under the laws of anti-terrorism. So you don't have to blow up a building anymore to be a terrorist. Just simply say to Rome, I do not agree with you. Boom! Extremists. That's where they're going. You know that, right? All these laws that we've been passing, even I'm sure President Bush doesn't know where this is going because he probably has never read The Great Controversy. But his advisor, the priest that sits in his office in the White House advising him, knows exactly where this is going. It's talking about using America as a tool for Rome to do what Rome wants. And they know where it's going. And so therefore, as they design these anti-extremists, they're not thinking extremists and terrorists, they're thinking Adventists. Anybody who disagrees with Rome and is willing. So that's why the White House called the General Conference and invited the General Conference president, come, let's talk. What do you think they want to talk about? Well, they didn't mention, I heard from a director of communication from the General Conference, he came and we talked, I asked him a question. They didn't talk about religious subjects. They basically wanted to know, are you going to work with us or not? Well, if my president wants me to work with them, I'm happy to work with them. But knowing prophecy and knowing the direction that the U.S. and Rome, they're not holding hands. They're in bed together. They've been committing adultery for years. We know that. So I would say, Mr. President, it would be an honor to work with you in health, in humanitarian projects, and anything that will benefit the public. We'd be delighted. But when it comes to religion, no compromise. That would be my response. Because I know what they're saying. Are you going to be on our side? You know what that means behind it, huh? You have to read between the lines. What does our side mean? Our side means Rome and us. Are you going to be with us or not? So therefore, we know what the laws are for. These laws, these lists of organizations have been building up, building up, building up. They've been watching every organization. Who is going to be against us? And you know what? So far, God has kept our head under the radar. I think that's why it was called the Lazarus experience. But right now, and I say this openly, right now, they don't have time to deal with Adventists. They are worried about Europe. They're worried about the United States. They're worried about South America. They're looking at much bigger problems. They don't have time to focus on Seventh-day Adventists. They'll deal with them later. And at this moment, while they're fooling around with all the world things that they got to deal with in an economic crisis, God is telling his people, go, 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 go. But if you want to wait till the red horse comes, suit yourself. I don't. That's everything in a nutshell, my brothers and sisters. The moment of opportunity is right now. It's time to preach. It's time to teach. It's time to heal. It's time to go penetrate the dark areas. It's time to put our money, our time, and our resources into taking by satellite, by telephone, by internet, by television, by radio, by medical, by work, clinics, better health, airplanes, any means possible, arrest the attention of the people. That's what it's time to do now. If you have a house, if you have a car, if you have reserves, if you have anything, it's time to lay it on the altar. Don't come and ask me. Ask God. Ask the owner. Lord, what would you have me to do? Last day events. Sister White said if we ask him, God will tell us when and how to sell our things. But if we don't ask him, he will not tell us. He will allow us to keep them until we lose them, and then they'll come down like a mountain to crush us. If you like being crushed by a mountain, hang on to your things a little longer. But if you want to experience a great joy, by the way, here's a secret my wife and I found out. If you give up everything, you can't lose anything in the crash. We don't even care if the markets crash. Big deal. Because you can't lose anything you don't have. So when I gave my house to God, theoretically I never had a house, but when I gave everything I had to God, what happened? God said, do this, do that. Yes, yes, yes. He will tell you if you ask him. He's the owner of everything. He owns you. He owns your things. Go to him and acknowledge him as Lord and Creator and say, Lord, what would you have me to do? And God will say, do this. You go, oh, but that's not comfortable, Lord. But what's your response? Oh, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to train me, aren't you? I'm going to trust you anyhow. Yes, sir, I'll do it anyhow. And then when God comes through for you, you go, oh, I was really painful, but God came through for me. Next time God will say, I want you to do that. You go, yes, sir. Next time he says, jump without looking. You jump. Why? Because he's not asking for blind faith. It's faith based on experience. You know you can trust God because he's always come through for you. You see where he's leading you? He's trying to give you an experience. Remember that little path Sister White saw? It got more narrow and more narrow and more narrow. You have to leave behind the horse carriages, leave the horses, leave the suitcases. Those who refused to let go fell off the path and disappeared. Those that let go continued to be led until finally the path is human support, got so narrow that a cord was let down. It was a narrow cord, but it balanced them. But as the path got more and more narrow, the cord got bigger and bigger, which means your experience of dependence on God is getting thicker and thicker. Finally, the path disappeared. All they had left was the cord, but they knew God was holding on to it, so they hung on to the cord and swung across to the other side. That is what God is asking us to do today. Brothers and sisters, I will say very clearly, this is not the time to accumulate resources and wealth. This is the time to get rid of everything. Let God tell you how to do it, but it is not the time to accumulate. If you get a good business offer, if you get an opportunity to make money, say, I'm sorry, this is not what God's people are called to do today. Now it's time for me to learn how to trust God. I'm going into ministry. God is calling every one of you into ministry. If you're not in ministry, get into it. Make your passion in life. I don't care if you're retired, young, or old. Make your passion reaching people and letting God reach people through you. If He asks you to give up something, do it with joy, because God is trying to find out who He can trust. Can He trust you to manage such a big thing as pouring out the resources? What if you did have access to 10 million? What about 100? What about 1 billion? What would you do with it? Well, you know what you would do with it? Exactly what you're doing with what you already have. If you're putting it away in the bank for your future, you would do the same again. But if you've let go of everything and you're trusting God, God can trust you with large privileges of reaching the souls. Now, there's one last final thing about the Lazarus experience. After the resurrection, which is such a beautiful event, what happens? And they sought to kill Lazarus too. That kind of shocked me because I never read that part. The success of God's people will be so great, there will be jealousy and hatred from the enemies. But they didn't kill him, did they? They sought to kill him because he was evidence. When God does this mighty miracle, at the very moment that the world is crashing economically, God is going to place billions in the hands of His people to finish the work, plus His Holy Spirit on top of it, and they will have a small opportunity. Maybe it's a matter of 2 to 3 months. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's a year. It's not going to be long. And we're going to be able to do the things, acquire the airplanes, acquire the television networks, everything. Those that are working in orphanages will be able to do that. Whoever God is leading, God will use His people to pass on the resources to the world, finish the work, and then the red horse will come because of the success. And then the final judgment, the harvest of the earth is complete, and Jesus is coming back in rapid order in our lifetime, very soon. So I would like to invite you tonight, this afternoon, if you have felt impressed by God, if you have heard Him talking to you through the testimonies presented, and you feel in your heart, you know in your heart, God is asking you to make a total commitment to Him. Everything you are, everything you have, Lord, is yours. I just want to learn how to trust you. I want to learn to hang on to that cord. I want to be ready to swing to the other side when all human support is cut off. But I have to start today. If this is your desire to say, Lord, everything from now on, use me. I want to be made ready. I know it's going to be uncomfortable, but there's no other way to learn. Muscles grow through no pain, no gain. I know that, but I'm willing to go through it if you will take me through it. I just surrender my will to you because, by the way, with pain comes great joy. For the joy that was laid up before Him, He endured the cross, right? If you want great joy, try giving up everything and reaching souls. I'll tell you what, you'll go to bed at night saying, Lord, why am I the lucky one? Why did you bless me so much? No, David, you're the only one that's because you said yes. Anybody who says yes, I will bless with the same joy. But not everybody wants to experience the pain, so they don't want to get the joy. You see, they come together. If you're willing to say yes to God and you heard His voice today, would you come forward? I would like to have a special prayer for those that want to accept the calling of God. If you come forward, I want you to know you don't own anything. 100% of everything you have belongs to God if you come forward. You will ask Him what He wants you to do, and you will take orders from Him. Every day you will surrender your life and renew your commitment, and He will lead you one step at a time. Keep coming forward if you have a little more room ahead of you so others can come in behind. Please. You realize that you have made the enemy very, very angry by doing so, right? Do you realize that? This is the devil's worst nightmare. God's people waking up and making a total commitment to revival and consecration. When this happens, his kingdom is placed at utmost risk. Red alert. God's people are waking up. Now this means that he's going to get after you. In order to have the protection you need, your homes need to be cleansed. You need to go back and take all those worldly things out of your home and your life. You don't need them because Satan will get at you through those things. There's movies on our shelves. There's books. There's music. Other things off the computer. Things have to be erased because Satan will go after you with everything he has. And you don't need him doing that. You need a perfect protection, and anything that happens after that will be with God's permission. But there's something God will not protect you from if you invite the devil into your home. So when you go home, I would like to invite you to do cleansing in your life. Take the things off the shelf. You don't need them. You're now working in full-time training to be God's leadership. After the crisis, the only leaders we're going to have in the church are those that learn to follow by faith today. Not by election, but by anointing. And you're getting ready for that. So you can't play with the enemy. Would you kneel with me if you possibly can kneel? Would you kneel with me as we commit our lives to God? Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the opportunity you've given us today to hear these stories of faith, to know, Lord, that you're going to restore to us the lost years, 30 years at least, maybe more, in which we've been compromising and closing down. And now, Lord, in one last, final, beautiful tsunami sweeping across the earth, the light of the angel of Revelation 18 is about to go and fill every single corner, every church, every home, every valley, every mountain, every country. Every individual is to hear this. And this will happen through the power of the Holy Spirit and the control that you have over those that are willing to obey you all the way and follow the Lamb. Now, Lord, we've come forward today because we want to be under your total control. We surrender to you, and we ask, Lord, that you will teach us the lessons that we so desperately need to learn of letting go and allowing you to control every decision in our lives. Nobody will take their things with them. And anybody who has any things at the end of time will lose them by force. So we surrender them voluntarily now. It's much easier to give them back to you and let you do with them what you want than it is to have them taken from us by force. And then to realize that we lost the opportunity to save souls while we still had it. The regret will be terrible and it will crush us. So Lord, we voluntarily submit our lives, our influence, our education, our families. We place it in your hands. Our resources, our goods, they're not ours anymore. They're yours. We just give them to you and we say, Lord, tell us what you want us to do with that which is yours and teach us to trust you. Thank you for this beautiful opportunity. And Lord, I want to thank you for the resources you are about to spill on us in a few days. We already have our list made up. We don't know how you're going to do it. We have no idea. But it's about to happen. And we're already waiting with our foot on the starting line, waiting for the gun to fire so that we can begin a rapid process of acquisition of resources and equipment and networks and schools and helping God's people all over the world. Anybody who's working in God's work, we want to be able to use as a channel of blessing for them as well. Nothing to be kept back, 100% to be sent on to the front lines. So Lord, thank you for this opportunity today, for your Holy Spirit, for the awakening and the revival. Change our lives. Help us to learn daily to renew this commitment and this plea with you to take control of our lives. Help us as we clean our homes and our lives from all the worldly things that have crept in. Forgive us for having allowed them in, but take them from us now. We ask, we praise your name, and we thank you for in Jesus' name.
Oh, to Jesus I surrender. Oh, to him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him in his presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender.